Force me back to basics. I have lost my instinct.
I usually am a very sensitive person, but I also tend to cry quite often. And last Sunday, I had again a moment of crying session, and I thought it was like very random, so I maybe had many things onto myself. But after thinking a bit longer about it, I understood that this sadness was not so random as I thought it was, or rootless, let's say. Something happened back in Albania that really touched me deep into my heart and really shook me. An 18-year-old got physically abused by a 40, 50 something years old person. Suddenly, an ocean of emotions just came into me: the fear, the helplessness, the guilt. And fortunately or unfortunately, I am an empath, a very empathetic person who is living abroad, and this is how it is to be an empath. So you already by default are very sensitive person as an empath, but coming and living abroad in a different country, so basically somewhere where your parents, I connected really to the family, coming and living somewhere where your family does not live or lives far away, it really divides you into different worlds. And it can happen quite often, actually, that your worlds that you carry on with you can break, and not one by one so you can handle them. It happens that they can break at once. Going a bit deeper into the incident before I navigate through my emotions, what happened was that an 18-year-old guy was working in a bar in Vlora, so in a seaside city in Albania. And for a very small argument, he got into a fight. So he didn't fight back, but he got into a fight with a 40 or 50-year-old man who happened to be a policeman. And he really physically abused him. And for whatever reason on this world, I would never justify that kind of violence. I'm pretty sure that everyone who saw this in the news really connected with this person because they all thought that this could be somebody they love. And coming back to me, he really reminded me of my brother, who basically is in a very similar age. And even though my brother does not work right now, he could really be in that situation. And I would never want that somebody I love would be in that position. Many emotions surface in this situation: fear, guilt, sadness. Fear because I am leaving them in a place like that, because if you watch Albanian news, you will see that there is a lot of violence going on, and anything can happen from time to time. Guilt because I am living in a country which I feel much more safe, and I feel like I can raise my voice, I can find my solutions to my problems, maybe in a bit bureaucratic way, it doesn't matter. But if I think about them, they are not in the same situation as me, so this makes me feel kind of guilty. I know it's not my feeling to feel, but I guess that everybody who moves into a better country really has this kind of feeling. And of course, sadness because I really felt like let down. I came to Germany because I felt like I was not fitting in Albania anymore. And also, at the moment that I left Albania, I felt like I needed to grow, and Albania did not have enough space for me to grow. It really was trying to shrink me in these boxes, which I never felt like I was belonging. So deep into my heart, even though I've left, I'm not working to make Albania better and so on. I left because I felt hopeless. But really, really inside me, there is a very tiny place where I feel hope for that country. And when this kind of situation happen, they really make me feel hopeless and sad, because it's like a slap that I don't want to get, that says to me that, yeah, you left, so you see you were right. It's quite normal to feel everything I felt, even though I guess in my case it's in a bit higher degree as an empath. But also, what makes me sad is that being so far, and basically you can do nothing about this, makes it even worse. So the feeling that you cannot help them, maybe tomorrow something happens and you cannot be there, like, if we pile it up, it's sadness, sad about everything that happens, and that you are not close to your family, you cannot do anything about this, you cannot be there for them. So, the first step. The second step is fear, that you are afraid of everything that can happen to them, from a crazy driver to a crazy policeman. Really fears me that something can happen, and something can happen to my family. I guess that's to anybody, but the possibility and probability of happening something in a not so regulated country is much higher. Also, guilt is there, and it's like a bit higher because it's smaller in the amount of it when I feel it, because I cannot really help them. So sadness, fear, guilt, and having all these feelings, it's not that these are the only feelings that you have during your life. It's not that your life here stops, so in the country where you're living stops, and then you just can focus on these feelings and take a moment to sink it in, and you have your time to and put everything, organize spaces. So life here continues and happens. So you have this amount of emotions that you need to handle, because you cannot just hide them, because they will come back worse. And you have your life going. In the best case, nothing's going on, everything's fine in your life, and you can focus more into this direction. But there are cases that in your life other things happen, and you are really torn into and stretched into constantly absorbing pain from both of the sides, which, as I said, it's not necessary, but being an empath really makes this not so easy. And unfortunately, being an empath makes this even twice harder, because really, sometimes if something happens to my family, I guess this happens to you too, I say it better happens to me than it happens to them. So if something happens in their side of the world, so if I have my world, so their world and my world, it better happen here rather than theirs. I guess this is a very common emotion. And I have mentioned being an empath quite a bit in this video, which is also the main topic. But what is actually an empath? An empath is someone who is highly attuned to the emotions of others, and often feeling their emotions as their own. And being this empathetic person makes the experience heavier, deeper, more complex. And being an empath can be both good and bad. I can tell you later a bit more about my journey as an empath, because it has been quite a ride. I acknowledge that being an empath, it's a thing you need to work on. It's really nice to think about other people's emotions, because otherwise we wouldn't be people and humans, and we wouldn't have built societies, communities, relationships. So empathy is always nice to be there, but being a highly empathetic person, it's not called anymore an empath. It can go till to the point that you don't have very well set boundaries, which was my problem for a very, very long time, but we will get back to this a bit later. And you know, because my family knows how am I, they try to hide things from me when they happen, and they try to tell me later on after a thing is solved what happened, how did it get solved. And this happens because they know that for me distance is already a heavy burden, and god, and putting also an extra thing on top would make it a bit more difficult than it already is. So this is an example of how people feel related to their family abroad. As an empath, you overanalyze everything that happens into your life. So not only your family stuff or things that directly connect to you, but you can overanalyze discussion. For example, did I say something right? Was I correct on what I said? Did I hurt the person? How would the other person think about the thing I told them? Which basically it's not your fault. You just need to be a person who does not offend anybody, who does not talk aggressively to anybody, and that's already enough. And this I had to learn on my way and on my life not in Albania. Another example is something which I really have improved. It's taking on emotional responsibility for everyone, even though it's not possible. This I can proudly say I have erased through therapy and through work with myself. But for me, before, it was a very huge issue of me putting myself on the place of the other people. So what they feel, how they feel, I need to feel it too, which basically it's wrong. You just need to be an observer, and usually empaths do this. So they put their self in the position of the other person, but not as an observer, but in, and they feel everything, and everything becomes much more heavier. And coming back to the point that you have these two worlds, being an empath in both of the worlds, it's a disaster. So you can cry over anything. You can be, I have spent hours of crying over my the life of my parents in Albania, the life of my brother in Albania, the life generally in Albania, what will be their for some reason I got the Zukunft, so the future in German. So their future generally. And basically, if I would speak logically to a friend of mine, I would say this is not your responsibility. But guess what? When I start spiraling in my brain, it becomes my responsibility and becomes my problem. So even though I like being an empath, I love having feelings, I feel like living abroad, so you're not nearby your parents, is becoming 1,000 times more difficult if you're an empath. But let's come to the good side of being an empath. So I love being an empath. I think I'm so blessed to have this ability to really be able to feel the emotions in the level in which I feel them, even though it's hard in a world where people are trying to suppress everything and to minimize the value of the emotions. And I'm so happy that mental health and emotional education is getting so popular finally. But let's get back to the fact that being an empath cannot be only bad. For me, it's amazing because I love listening to people. I love listening to their life, to their struggles, to their opinions, to everything. And I really enjoy being on their world and really understanding how it feels. And crying is, for me, it has been my entire life a way of coping with everything. And to be honest, it has resulted, or it has been the best thing or the best tool I have had my entire life. Okay, in sometimes it really ruins the moment, but mostly I would definitely, in any lifetime I would be given, choose to be a crier and cry rather than not being able to do so, because it has helped me to release every stress, every sadness that I had in my life, and really come back to being logical and analyzing everything and not being fully charged and needing an extra recharge time. And what I have been taught by being an empath in many scenarios in my life, because you are an empath, not everybody is an empath. So if you, and this comes like a boomerang, because you really feel everything into your core, but maybe some people who surround you do not feel why you feel like that. So you also not have the expectations of you understanding others for them to understand you. And this happens in many contexts, not only on the same language speakers, but also with other people from other cultures. Being an empath in many situations can put you into a position where you really feel bad and you get really charged with negative energy that you cannot actually handle. Suddenly, it becomes your burden. And from this, my biggest learning has been that I have worked very, 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 very hard for this, to really not put myself into situations or feelings that don't affect me. I have worked so hard to keep calmness when my friends explain me problems, but still it's hard when it comes to your family and what happens back in your country. And coming to a closure, what I was taught from being an empath and really feeling everything from my parents, how are they doing, what they are doing, how can I help them, and so on. I usually step back and I try to evaluate my life. So my parents are, thank God, healthy. My brother is healthy. My friends are healthy. They are in a very good position. Again, thank God. And they are in a situation that actually does not really need help. It's nice that I feel them, that I keep them so close to my heart. Actually, they are not so in need. And rather than pushing myself into thinking how to help them, I would choose to step back, as I said, and really be thankful, grateful for everything I have, and having everything I dreamed of, except that I don't have my family here. Okay, I choose to not put negative energy on the things I do. So even though I'm an empath, I try to really use it in a way that does good to people. So I'm nice and I use this on my everyday life, but I try to stop harming me. And if you also have been feeling that way, At some point of your journey, it's something that unfortunately we need to get used to, that our parents, our family is back in our country, and maybe it's time to learn how to tame our empathy, to not get into our journeys in the bad way. After taming it, to be grateful for what we have, what we are going through, and be nice to ourselves. So I hope you felt a little virtual hug. I hope you saw that you have a friend in this specific topic. If you like this type of content, please comment and let me know, what do you think? What were your feelings? Something happened into your country? How did you overcome it? Let me know. See you next week.